With 40 guests seated around refined tables, my grandmother's voice sliced through the anniversary celebration like a razor through satin. Due to her hearing difficulties, she always spoke louder than anyone else, and her words echoed throughout the entire dining hall. "Rachel, how do you like living in the house I purchased for you?" I almost choked on my wine. "What house?" I was stuck in a tiny one-bedroom flat, with a kitchen so compact you could not open the refrigerator and cupboard doors at the same time. Yet, as I observed the color drain from my parents' faces and heard their forks clatter against their plates, I sensed something dreadful was about to unravel. This is the tale of how a single dinner question uncovered 3 decades of deceit, favoritism, and betrayal so deep it forced me to question everything I believed about family. It reveals what happens when those expected to love you most decide your aspirations are less important than someone else's comfort. My name is Rachel, and I have to share how I ended up here because the betrayal did not begin that evening. It had been simmering for years, concealed beneath family meals and birthday greetings, hidden behind the subtle cruelty families master in moments they think go unnoticed. Let me take you back to where it all started. When I reached the age of 18, my parents Caroline and Benjamin summoned me to our living room for what they called their independence talk. The message was harshly unmistakable. I was finally an adult, ready to carve my own path in life. There was no assistance for college, no funds for textbooks, no safety net, just a firm shove out of the nest and an encouraging tap on the shoulder. "You're clever, Rachel," my father said, his voice carrying that unmistakable tone of finality I had come to recognize throughout the years. "You will find your way." I recall sitting there, struggling to absorb their words. Other kids I knew were receiving college funds, care packages, and parents who fussed over their meal plans and dorm furnishings. I got a simple handshake and a wish for good luck. At the same time, my younger sister, Jessica, lived in an entirely different world. Since her birth, my parents had been saving for her education. New clothes appeared in her wardrobe frequently, not just ordinary clothes, but those expensive brand-name items that made her peers jealous. Whenever a new model was released, she always had the latest iPhone, along with designer bags that cost more than my monthly food expenses, anything that caught her attention. The favoritism was so clear and painful to see. However, I had learned early on that mentioning it only made things worse. So I swallowed my hurt and kept pushing ahead. That was my approach. I simply kept moving forward. College turned out to be a unique kind of misery. I shared a dreadful apartment with 2 other girls, Hannah and Jane, in a building that should have been condemned years ago. The place was crumbling in ways that might have been amusing if we had not actually been living there. Cockroaches scurried across the kitchen counters at night as if they owned the entire space. Every single winter the heating system broke down, and our landlord handled repairs as if doing us a personal favor we did not deserve. I worked in a grocery store, scanning items and packing bags, while other students attended parties and dealt with typical college dilemmas like choosing a fraternity or worrying about getting to their 10 o'clock class. Some evenings, I survived on instant ramen and crackers for 3 days straight because that was all I could afford. Passing by the campus bookstore, I gazed at textbooks that cost more than my weekly food budget, knowing I had to borrow them from classmates who barely remembered my name or search for older editions online. The fatigue was relentless and deep in my bones. Juggling work and studies, struggling just to stay afloat, I watched my peers fret over concerns that seemed like luxuries to me. Vacation trips to Cancun during spring break, brand new laptops, dining out whenever they pleased. These were alien ideas in my reality. However, one person lifted me up during these difficult years. Her name was Margaret. She was my father's mother, my grandmother living in a different state, and everything my parents were not. Grandma Margaret had made wise investments in her youth and now enjoyed a comfortable life in a lovely home with a dependable car and enough resources to support family in times of need. She faced serious hearing difficulties, which made phone conversations impossible. Instead, we relied on text messages, and those became my connection to her. Every few months during university, I would receive a message from her that would bring tears of relief to my eyes. "Sending you some support, dear. Concentrate on your studies." Then, unexpectedly, $1,000 or $2,000 would show up in my bank account. Suddenly, I was able to afford nutritious meals for a while. I could purchase the textbooks I needed rather than struggling to share with classmates who had their own challenges. I would send her lengthy, heartfelt replies. "Grandma, you have saved my life once again. I truly don't know what I would do without you. Thank you so much." She would respond with incredibly kind words about how proud she was of me and how education is the most valuable investment one can make. Thanks to Grandma Margaret's assistance, I needed only one job instead of juggling 2 or 3 like many of my peers. I could finally attend my lectures instead of working all hours. Without her help, graduating would have been impossible. She was literally the difference between success and dropping out, between hope and despair. Now, 7 years later, I am still working hard, saving every penny I can. I long for a place of my own, not rented, but truly mine. Something permanent, something that could not be taken away by a landlord's decisions or rent hikes. Unfortunately, I still cannot afford it. I deprive myself of everything to turn that dream into reality. No luxurious dinners at restaurants, no new clothes unless they were absolutely necessary. No holidays or weekend getaways. Every single penny went directly into my savings, steadily building toward a goal that seemed both unreachable and deeply essential. My family barely kept in touch anymore. Mom and Dad called perhaps once a month, usually to complain about something or ask how work was going in that polite yet detached manner that made it clear they were just ticking a box without genuine interest in the answer. Jessica messaged occasionally, mainly to show off the latest item our parents had bought her. I would scroll through her social media posts, filled with designer handbags, pricey meals at fancy restaurants, weekend escapes to beach resorts, and wonder how it felt to live so carelessly. I felt more guilty about not contacting Grandma Margaret more often. She was aging, her health was not the best, and I knew she deserved more than just sporadic texts. But I was working 10-hour days, coming home drained, and using weekends to catch up on everything neglected during the week. The guilt gnawed at me, yet I couldn't find a way to fit anything else into my already overwhelming routine. So, with my 30th birthday approaching, I chose to do something different. I texted Grandma Margaret and invited her to my apartment for a modest celebration. I was truly thrilled by the idea of finally seeing her again after such a long time, sharing a meal in my modest apartment, and showing her how her encouragement had helped me create something close to a real life. However, she replied with unfortunate news. Health issues would keep her from traveling. She apologized and said she had already given my birthday present to my parents, who would bring it to me at the celebration. I completely understood. Her well-being had to be the priority. Still, the disappointment was sharp. Another family event where I felt like an afterthought, a mere obligation, the person who received whatever leftover attention no one else wanted. The day of my party finally came, and I had invited a few colleagues from work. Nicole, Andrew, and Grace. Nothing extravagant, just pizza and cake in my small living room. My parents and Jessica arrived late, naturally falling into their usual behavior instantly. "This place is so cramped," Rachel's mother remarked, glancing around as if detecting a bad smell. "The lighting is awful in here," Dad added, squinting at the ceiling lamp as though it had somehow insulted him. Jessica simply rolled her eyes and collapsed on the sofa without even greeting me. They handed me their gifts with all the enthusiasm of people completing a checklist. A cheap perfume from Mom that I knew I would never use, a gift card to a restaurant I would never visit from Dad, and a book from Jessica that I had no intention of reading. I could tell they had grabbed these items at the very last moment, probably while on their way here. Then Mom said, "Oh, and here is your grandmother's present," as she pulled a stunning crystal vase out of her bag. "She wanted you to have this." I took the vase, feeling its solid weight in my hands. It was truly exquisite, heavy, and looked pricey, the crystal shimmering as it caught the light perfectly. "Thanks," I replied, curious about why Grandma Margaret would pick something so refined and not very practical for my tiny living space. They stayed for exactly half an hour. I actually timed it. Jessica spent nearly all of that time glued to her phone screen. Mom grumbled about the traffic, and Dad kept glancing at his watch as if he had somewhere urgent to be. Then Mom suddenly declared, "Well, we should be heading out. We have a lot to do." "Yes, a busy day," Dad agreed, pulling on his jacket already. And just like that, they were gone. My friends stuck around until late, and we genuinely enjoyed ourselves. Yet, I couldn't shake the sense of disappointment. This was my family. This was what I was dealt. 30 minutes of obligation disguised as a celebration. After everyone left and I tidied up, I sat down on the couch holding the vase. It truly was beautiful, and I found myself pondering Grandma Margaret's thinking behind choosing it. I grabbed my phone and sent her a simple message. "Thank you for the lovely vase. I really appreciate it." A month went by and I slipped back into my usual routine. Work, save money, and repeat. I was sitting at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon, sorting through quarterly reports, and trying hard not to dwell on how much I despised my job when my phone suddenly rang. The caller ID showed it was my cousin Evelyn, whom I hadn't heard from in months. "Hey Evelyn, what's going on?" I answered, expecting some light family chatter. "Rachel, I had to call you about something. I'm honestly stunned," she said, her tone urgent enough to make me stop typing and fully focus. "Stunned about what?" I asked. "About Jessica buying a house. At her age, how did she even manage that?" I stared at my computer screen, feeling like the ground had shifted under me. "Evelyn, I have no clue what you're talking about." "What house?" "Jessica's new place. Don't tell me you haven't heard," she said. The silence afterwards seemed endless. My heart sank as I realized something important had happened in the family, and once again, I was completely out of the loop. "Evelyn, I swear I don't know anything about this." "What house?" Her voice softened, almost tender. "Oh my God, Rachel. You really have no idea, do you? Jessica had a housewarming party 2 days ago. It was huge. Around 50 people attended. The house is lovely. Not gigantic, but really cozy. Everyone was asking about where you were. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't been invited. That's what I guessed when I didn't see you there. But your parents told everyone that you dislike noisy parties and that you're too introverted for that. That kind of situation. But Rachel, that is not even the worst part. Later, I overheard your mother talking to my mother in a low voice. She was hinting that you felt envious of Jessica because she managed to purchase a house at such a young age. She implied that you were resentful about it. The fury hit me like a wave of impact. Envious. Resentful. I was completely unaware of the house. How could I possibly feel envy towards something I did not even know about? Evelyn, I promise you, I had no clue. Jessica bought a house. No one mentioned a word to me. Seriously, Rachel, that is really unfair. After we ended the call, I just sat there, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of the news I had just received. My sister, who is only 25, had recently finished her studies and was working part-time at a coffee shop, yet somehow she had managed to buy a house. Where did she find that kind of money? How could that even be real? The next morning, I decided to call Jessica directly. She picked up on the third ring, her tone cheerful and casual, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Jessica, I heard you purchased a house. Why didn't you invite me to your housewarming party?" She actually laughed. "Come on, Rachel. You know you do not enjoy parties." "That is not true. You know it very well. I would have attended if you had asked me." "Whatever. It is no big deal." I inhaled deeply, trying to keep my voice calm. "Where did you get the money to buy a house, Jessica?" There was silence for several moments. When she finally replied, her voice had shifted completely, becoming cold and sharp. "Mom and Dad gave it to me, and it is none of your business anyway. I need to hang up now." She ended the call before I had a chance to reply, leaving me clutching the phone and staring blankly at the wall. Our parents were the ones who gave Jessica that opportunity. The very same parents who denied me any help with college, who delivered a speech about independence when I turned 18, had now apparently provided Jessica with enough money to purchase a house. The following 3 months were pure agony. Jessica continuously shared images of her new home on social networks with captions like, "So thankful to my wonderful parents for making this dream come true." Each post felt like a targeted insult. I would gaze at pictures of her stunning kitchen, her roomy living area, her flawless little garden, and weigh those memories against my college days. Meals of instant noodles and crackers, a broken heater, and countless nights spent sobbing from exhaustion and worry, while our parents seemed to be saving funds to buy Jessica a house. Then our parents' 35th wedding anniversary was coming up. I actually wanted to attend this celebration despite everything that had transpired. I even purchased a thoughtful gift, an elegant photo frame holding their wedding picture. It cost me nearly $200, but I believed it would be meaningful, a gesture to show I still valued our family even though we had grown distant. I noticed the announcement on our mother's Facebook page about the upcoming anniversary party, complete with the date and location, a fancy restaurant downtown. Oddly, they never contacted me directly or sent an invitation, but I assumed they were simply preoccupied with organizing the event. Several days before the anniversary, I received a message from Grandma Margaret that made my heart race. She said she was feeling better these days and was excited about celebrating Benjamin and Caroline's anniversary together. It would be wonderful to see everyone face to face again, especially since I knew how busy life had been and how we hadn't had the chance to visit recently. My excitement grew. Finally, an opportunity to reunite with Grandma Margaret and mark a family occasion. I hoped this moment might become a fresh start, a chance to heal and move beyond the strange tensions that had developed over time. However, the following day, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Hi, Mom. I'm really looking forward to the anniversary party," I said. "I already picked out a gift for you and Dad." Her response, though, was tense and uneasy. She said, "Rachel, we need to discuss Saturday. We've decided it would be best if you did not come." I almost dropped the phone in disbelief. "What do you mean you don't want me there?" I asked. She explained that they had to limit the number of guests and claimed I did not really need to be present. She suggested I could visit their house at another time to offer congratulations. Before I could respond, she had already ended the call. I sat there holding the phone, utterly stunned. In the past, I might have let this hurt me and stayed away, accepting it as proof that I did not matter to them. But this time, something was different. Grandma Margaret was going to be there, and I hadn't seen her for years. She was expecting me, and I was not about to let my parents stop me from seeing the one family member who genuinely cared about me. The following day, I sent their anniversary present through a courier, including a note, hoping they would enjoy a memorable celebration. Then on Saturday, I chose my finest dress and drove to the restaurant. Upon entering the dining area, I noticed around 40 people seated at elegantly arranged tables. Grandma Margaret was already present, occupying a place of honor near the front. She appeared smaller than I recalled, more delicate, yet she wore a stunning blue dress and her hair was styled flawlessly. She seemed dignified and graceful, just as I remembered her. The instant my parents spotted me, panic flashed across their expressions. Mom hurried over with urgency in her voice, whispering, "Rachel, what are you doing here? I told you not to come. Please just leave. This is neither the time nor the place." Dad appeared behind her, his face flushed as well. "Please, Rachel, this is not the moment or place for whatever this is." Suddenly, Grandma Margaret's voice rang out like a bell through the room. Due to her hearing difficulties, she spoke very loudly, and her words echoed throughout the entire space. "Rachel, oh my beautiful granddaughter, I am so delighted to see you." Every gaze in the restaurant turned towards us. Mom and Dad stood frozen, their faces pale. "Benjamin, Caroline, bring Rachel here to sit beside me right now. I have not seen this girl in far too long." With 40 pairs of eyes fixed upon us and 4 smiling faces watching, my parents had no other option. They guided me to Grandma Margaret's table, causing Jessica to shift seats so I could sit beside my grandmother. "There's my girl," Grandma Margaret said, gripping my hand with unexpected firmness. "Now this is what a real family gathering looks like." The meal started, and everyone attempted to behave normally, but I sensed the tension from my parents' table like warmth from a roaring fire. They kept casting anxious looks toward Grandma Margaret, me, and each other. Jessica shot daggers at me from across the table, as though my mere presence had spoiled her entire evening. The guests delivered heartfelt toasts, praising my parents' long-lasting marriage. Uncle Henry spoke about how kind-hearted and generous they always had been. Aunt Audrey shared how wonderful their parenting was. Sitting there absorbing all these flattering words, I wondered if these people truly knew the Caroline and Benjamin I recognized. Grandma Margaret squeezed my hand every few moments. "I'm so happy you're here, dear," she kept repeating. "It's been far too long." I genuinely enjoyed sitting next to her, finally meeting her after all these years. She appeared frailer than in my memory, yet her eyes remained sharp and full of life. Around her neck was a stunning diamond necklace I had never noticed before, and her presence felt like a strong shield protecting me. Halfway through the meal, after the main dish had been served, Grandma Margaret turned toward me. Her voice, as always, carried loudly enough for everyone in the restaurant to hear. "Rachel, how do you feel about living in the house I gifted you for your 30th birthday?" The whole restaurant fell completely silent. I mean, utterly quiet. Everyone stopped chewing and stared directly at us. Forbes froze halfway with food near his mouth. Conversations cut off abruptly. I leaned closer to her ear and said as clearly as possible, "Grandma, I have no idea about any house. Mom and Dad had given me a beautiful vase from you for my birthday." Grandma Margaret's expression shifted entirely. Confusion appeared briefly, then realization, followed by a cold anger I had never witnessed before. "A vase? What vase?" At that precise moment, I heard the unmistakable sound of 2 forks clinking on plates simultaneously. I glanced over and saw that my parents had both dropped their cutlery. Their faces were as pale as sheets, and Dad's hands were trembling. All the guests looked back and forth between Grandma Margaret and my parents, trying to understand what was going on. The quiet was so heavy, you could hear people breathing. Grandma Margaret slowly turned toward my parents. Her voice grew even louder, if possible. "Benjamin, Caroline, I want you to explain immediately where the money I gave you to purchase a house for Rachel has gone." The silence in the restaurant was overwhelming. 40 people held their breath, waiting for a response that everyone somehow knew would change everything. "Mom, maybe we should talk privately," Dad said, his voice full of strain. "No, I want to know right now. I gave you the money to purchase a house for Rachel 3 months ago. I assisted you with the realtor. I signed all the documents to have the house registered under Rachel's name, and I gave you the keys to hand over to her on her birthday. Where is the property? Dad rose abruptly, his chair screeching loudly across the floor. His entire body shook as if caught in a fierce wind. Mom was softly sobbing into her napkin, tears smudging her makeup. Mom, we actually gave the house to Jessica instead. The guests gasped audibly. Someone's wineglass clattered heavily onto the table. I overheard a woman whisper, "Oh my goodness, just behind me." What? Grandma Margaret's voice was so sharp I feared the windows might crack. Jessica suddenly stood up from her seat, her face flushed with anger and anxiety. That house belongs to me. Mom and Dad gave it to me. I have no intention of giving it to anyone. Jessica, sit down, commanded Grandma Margaret, her tone filled with the unwavering authority of someone who raised many children and would not tolerate defiance. That house was purchased for Rachel with my money. I do not care. Jessica was now standing by the table, crying and yelling. It is my home now. I have been living there for months. You cannot just take it away from me. Grandma Margaret got up slowly, her movements purposeful and dignified despite her age. She gestured to my parents in a way that conveyed both command and profound disappointment. Benjamin, Caroline, come here immediately. My parents exchanged looks. They stared at one another with the fearful look of people who understood they were about to face unavoidable consequences. Reluctantly, they approached the spot where Grandma Margaret was standing. She adjusted her hearing aid and leaned in close to them. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, which was unlike her usual tone. I could not make out what she was saying, nor could anyone else in the restaurant, but I noticed my parents' faces growing paler with every word. Father began nodding rapidly, as if conceding to something he strongly opposed. Mother covered her mouth as if she might be ill. After around 2 minutes of this silent yet clearly tense exchange, my parents returned to their table. They looked as if they had witnessed a ghost. Father's hands trembled while he stood and spoke to the room in a voice that trembled under pressure. Everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. We are grateful for your presence, but the celebration must end now. It is time for all to head home. The guests started collecting their belongings, murmuring softly about what they had just seen. I overheard snatches of conversations as people passed our table. Did you hear about the house? That unfortunate girl had her home given to the sister. What kind of parents behave like that? I glanced at Grandma Margaret as she gathered her purse with movements that appeared both weary and resolute. Would you like to stay at my apartment tonight? Yes, dear. I do not want to stay with them after what they have done. That evening, Grandma Margaret and I sat in my modest living room and shared the longest, most sincere conversation we ever had. She revealed things that chilled me deeply. I gave them $60,000 to buy you a house 3 months ago, she said, her voice heavy with sorrow. I went through all the documents, worked with the realtor, made sure everything was under your name. I even handed them the keys to give you on your birthday, but they gave me a vase instead, I replied. We both laughed, unable to believe the absurd situation. Your father has been using my personal bank account for years, she added. Whenever they needed money for Jessica's things or their own expenses, they simply took what they wanted. I trusted them, because Benjamin is my son. The following morning, my parents came to my door with a set of keys. Dad could not even meet my eyes as he handed them over. These are for you, he said softly. The house keys. I accepted them without a word. What could I say? A week later, I drove to my house. My actual house, the one that was meant to belong to me from the start. It was small but charming, with a tiny front yard and flower boxes beneath the windows. Upon entering, I noticed my parents had clearly decorated it with Jessica in mind, not me. The kitchen was adorned with pink details everywhere. The bedroom was painted lavender, Jessica's favorite color. The house was no longer just a building. It had become mine, and I intended to transform it into a place of comfort and belonging. Half a year had slipped by since that dreadful anniversary dinner. Since then, I have avoided contact with my parents and Jessica, and honestly, I do not miss the constant tension, the biased treatment, or the relentless sense that I was never enough. Finally, my home is beginning to feel like mine. I covered the pink and lavender walls with hues that truly suit my taste. In the backyard, I planted a small vegetable garden where I can nurture and watch life flourish under my care. Most importantly, I have been making regular visits to Grandma Margaret. Every other weekend, I drive to her state to spend quality time together. We cook, watch classic films, and share conversations about everything under the sun. Last month she told me, "You are the granddaughter I always dreamed of. Intelligent, self-reliant, and sincere. Your parents raised Jessica to be entitled and spoiled, but somehow you took a different path." For the first time as an adult, I feel genuine happiness. I possess my own home, financial independence, and a meaningful bond with the one family member who truly cares for me. It took 3 decades and a disastrous family meal to receive what I was worthy of all along. Sometimes the deepest wounds guide us exactly where we need to arrive. Losing the family you assumed you had can lead to finding the family you actually deserve. Thank you for listening, and if you resonated with this story, please share it with others. Remember to leave a comment and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Hidden family truths, opportunities to start anew, and discovering your value when those nearest to you let you down. Occasionally, the most profound truth emerges from the softest whisper.